So now a video to go over some of the details about how I, Mr. Durning, will run things in my class. So first of all, you're probably concerned with how will I earn my grade in this class. So I try to pretty much mirror what the IB does, which is 80% based on the test and 20% based on the lab, the internal assessment, but it's slightly modified to sort of benefit you. So 65% of your score is going to come just from big unit IB tests. And the other 15% is still going to be close to being based on like tests, but sort of smaller tests. So whether in the HL class that means SL tests, or whether it means small quizzes, or also just checking in on you for doing your homework. You'll get small amounts of points for completing homework assignments. So that will give you 15% of your score, which is enough to sort of bump you one way or the other if you're on the edge of a grade boundary. 20% of your grade will come from lab scores using internal assessment rubrics, which is the same percentage that it's given by the IB. So there are grade boundaries for your quizzes and tests to determine which IB grade level you're going to fall into. These are not exactly the same as the full IB grade boundaries, but the full IB grade boundaries are designed to be used for the entire IB exam that tests you on all 11 topics at one time. And so these grade boundaries are what's going to be used when you're taking one topic tests. So they're a little bit more challenging than the overall grade boundaries, but they're meant to mimic the challenge of the actual IB exam so that everyone's getting an accurate understanding of what level they're at. And these are based on years and years of my experience with the exam and how my students have done in class, and then how they've done on the actual exam. So the way this would work is that if you get 85% or higher on your unit test, then that's going to put you into the 7 category for a mark on, say, your quarter report or your semester report card. However, unfortunately, if you get an 83% or an 84%, that does not round you up. Even though you just get close to the 7, you will end up in the 6 category. So the way that the IB is going to work, it doesn't matter if you're just 1 mark away from the 7. Unless you reach that lowest rung of the 7 category, you don't end up with the 7 as your IB score. And so that's how it's got to work in our class as well. So these are the grade boundaries. They'll be on the wall, and they're posted on the Veracross page. So if you want to look at them, you can. But this is going to determine where you're falling for an IB score based on your tests and quizzes. The lab boundaries are pretty similar. They're based on the actual boundaries published by the IB that they use for the internal assessment. So the internal assessment is scored out of 24 points. And so based on the different grade bands that they publish, so for example, to get a 7 on the IA, you need to earn from 20 to 24 points out of 24. And that translates to 79 to 100%. So these are the boundaries to get into the various grade bands for the IA. What do you need to have for this class? Definitely always need a laptop charged or with a charger in class. We're going to do activities using databases online, data loggers where you need Pasco Capstone. So you always need it, whether or not you use it every day. You definitely won't need to, but you always have to have it with you. You also really need a 2-hole binder. If you don't have one, I'll give one to you. There are lots of handouts, whether they be question packets, lab handouts, or if you print out the notebook files, there's just tons and tons of papers you need to keep organized. And so a 2-hole binder is really essential, or all your resources are going to be a mess. You obviously need a good calculator, a GDC calculator, and something to write with. I've got paper. I'm happy to let you borrow paper to put into your notebook. As far as textbooks go, everyone's going to be provided with the Pearson baccalaureate higher level or standard level chemistry textbook. We've got hard copies in class, and we have the e-text available for you, and we'll give you a username and password for that. If you want a copy of that, you can find it online to buy it, but we are not going to provide you with a hard copy of that book. However, there is another text that's reasonably priced. That's a really good study guide. It's very dense, not really a full-on textbook, but really what its name implies. It's a study guide put out by Jeff Noose, and I've linked it on the class website. It's a great resource to buy, a great thing to use to study for tests and for the IB exam when that time comes. Other expectations are pretty straightforward, but just a couple of details. Please make sure you're on time and ready to go when class starts. Time is very precious in the IB, and we're always running out of time to get through this course quickly and with enough time for really appropriate revision. And so that means you've got to be there on time. You've got to be have everything out ready to go when the bell rings. If you are late more than 4 times to first period, it will result in detention. And if it's just a major problem, we'll have to communicate home about it. Students have to complete homework, and please follow through on all instructions. So that may mean watching a video, watch the whole thing, complete the questions that go along with it. If you fall behind on the videos, you're really going to be stuck because we're just going to be moving fast, and I'm going to expect that you've done it. If I ask you to complete some questions, that means you've tried the questions, maybe you've timed yourself, and you've also checked the answer key to see how you've done, so you know which questions to bring up in class the next day. So really just being thorough with your homework. At this point, you're in 11th or 12th grade, and I'm going to expect you to be organized and responsible. And I'm not going to look behind your shoulder and check on every last detail. But if you're not keeping up with things, it is going to come back to get you. Okay, so it's time to take responsibility for your work. Be respectful. Let's be positive. Let's be engaged. That means treating each other with respect, being safe. We're going to be using chemicals and equipment that demands respect. And so you need to pay attention when you're using it, and just don't goof around with your classmates inside the lab. Communicate, please. If you're going to be absent, I understand that happens all the time, but make sure if you are out, please email me. Ask me what you can do to get caught up. Usually, if you have the class website, it's going to be really easy to find the resources that you've missed, watch a video to catch up on what you missed in class. And obviously, we'll always work together to get you caught up in a reasonable and timely fashion. But the better you communicate with me, it's just going to make things go more smoothly. And please reach out for extra help if you feel like you're struggling. Don't wait for me to push you to do it. Please seek me out on your own. We can set up times during lunch, during free periods, before school. We can try after school. Come prepared with specific things you want to look at or questions you want to work on. That's the best way to go about it. And when will I contact home? I'm going to communicate home for good and for bad reasons. I send emails or veer across reports, but my promise to you is that I will always communicate with you first before sending home any sort of concern email or report. The reasons why I might send home a communication is if you've done worse than an IB level 4 on a major assignment, or if you've done really much worse than your normal level of work on, say, a test or a lab report, when something's really out of the ordinary. If there's some sort of misbehavior that's happening on a regular basis, or you're late to class, not completing your work on time, things like that could also result in communicating home. And of course, academic dishonesty, which we hope we won't see at this point. But in case we do, that would result in communication home. There are also definitely going to be positive communications home. I might not warn you about those, but hopefully those will be welcome communications. So those are the general things about the class, the texts, the things that you should have when you show up to class, and the grade boundaries. And so I hope that's clear. And now you know a little bit more about how you're going to get this grade in class. And if you have any more questions, please ask me in the next class when you see me.